right, welcome back to AMGA at my garage again. And we've had a long weekend. It's only Tuesday. We're talking about what a yen carry trade is and how it's affecting the economy. Tim Walz, big time. And I'm sure you all heard about the attack in Iraq on American soldiers. This is at my garage again. This is the first unforced error of the Kamala Harris campaign. And so if for Trump fans, they should be looking at this and saying, "Oh, thank God Tim Walz was picked," right? The only worst case scenario, the only worst candidate probably they could have selected would have been Pete Buttigieg. I know that people love Pete Buttigieg on the left, but the reality is the middle part of America, the people that Kamala Harris needs to win, the centrists, don't. And Tim Walz is anything but a moderate. The reason that they can be painted like a moderate is because he's a chubby white dude from the Midwest, right? And everyone suddenly thinks, oh, he's a moderate because he's a chubby white dude from the Midwest. And nothing can be further from the truth. It's so funny that the entire debate came down to, oh, will be Shapiro, will be Walz. And the real problem that no one wants to pick, that Harris could not pick Shapiro, is because he's Jew. He's a Jew, right? That's the problem, right? It's not because of anything. His policies aren't that far out of alignment with the Democrat Party, and they're not even that far out of alignment with Kamala Harris's. I mean, he's pretty far leftist too, right? But that's the real issue. Why is that an issue? Because Kamala Harris looks at the fall session of college is starting up, and she goes, all I need to have happen is for this war in Israel to continue on and everyone to say, I picked a Jewish vice president to run with me. And so therefore I'm supporting this ongoing war in Gaza. And she knows that the protests that would be out there would be on TV, all over the internet, all online, and it would just be the worst thing for her, right? So she cannot select that. And that's a big problem because there's a section of the Democrat Party that is incredibly anti-Semitic. It's a major problem for them. And the reality is that's the only reason Shapiro doesn't get picked. Why is that a problem? If they have picked, if she's so bad at this, and it shows clear ineptitude, right, as a campaign and running a campaign. Pennsylvania has 19 electoral votes. The path to victory for the GOP is incredibly thin, right, if Pennsylvania is lost. And so picking Shapiro pretty much locks it up. Shapiro's real well liked in Pennsylvania, right? He's well liked. He's got 61% approval rating or whatever in Pennsylvania. And if you pick Shapiro, you pretty much carry the state, right? 19 electoral votes locked up like that. The other states that are considered swing states, Michigan, Minnesota. Minnesota's not even really a swing state. I'm not sure why. That's why it doesn't make sense with the Walz pick, but we'll get onto that in a second. But Minnesota, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, Nevada, those are not necessarily as consequential as Pennsylvania. And the reality is, if you bring Shapiro on board, you pretty much lock this up, right? And it hides that far left mentality that Harris holds, right? It hides it better than it is. You can be the Trojan horse, right? But what's happened is Kamala Harris is so much online. She's so online that all she sees is the TikTok videos and the Twitter posts and yada 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 of the echo chamber on the far left that really want more progressive notes, right? So Tim Walz, self-proclaimed progressive governor, has a history of being progressive, and the idea that they're going to try to paint him as a moderate with some sort of platform at the DNC with Kamala Harris is wild, right? Now you have a California Democrat running for governor. And we all know California Democrats are not centrists. None of them. Not a single one. You can't find one. I dare you to find one. They don't exist, right? It's just not out there, right? It's like trying to find a toothpick at a swimming pool. It's incredibly hard to find if you can find one, right? The alternative, and so the alternative would have been to select like Shapiro, right? That would make you appear moderate, and it brings a state with you. But picking Walz is hubris, right? That's just a sign of the hubris for the Harris campaign, right? Oh, we picked up steam. We've got a lot of the votes coming our way. I can pick whoever I want, and it's going to be okay, right? So they pick Walz. So what is stopping Walz? All right, who is Walz? No one knows him. 71% of the population doesn't even know who Tim Walz is, right? So Jim Garrity at the National Review writes this a little bit about about Tim Walz and has a little article about him. So the early spin on Kamala Harris selecting Minnesota Governor Tim Walz is that he's a terrific pick because Walz gives off the right vibe. Right, Mike Murphy assures that Walz has a moderate vibe, distinct from liberal record. Second media look, if honest, will note that it is the most progressive D ticket since Dukakis. Okay, he goes on later to discuss the vibe, and he says, when people say Walz has a moderate vibe, it must mean that he's heavy set, bald, glasses, and flannel wearing Midwesterner who looks like he could be a guy behind the counter of a hardware store recommending Phillips head machine screw over a flathead machine screw. And that's the whole point, right? He looks like he's more like a GOP guy just because of the way he looks. And this is the whole thing. The Democrat Party is so concerned about the way you look, right? That is their whole thing about pushing policies. It's more important about what you look like than it is about what your actual content is. And if you get into the content of Tim Walz, you start to realize that he is anything but a centrist, anything but a moderate, right? So Garrity in National Review goes on, the good vibes on Walz require averting your eyes from his record as governor, one embarrassing and egregious large-scale scandal of waste, fraud, and mismanagement after another. Perceiving a moderate vibe requires not looking at Walz's actual positions, which include his own self-described abject failure on responding to the George Floyd riots. Yeah, he was in charge during the George Floyd riots. His support of making Minnesota a sanctuary state that doesn't cooperate with federal immigration authorities, right? Sanctuary state, just like sanctuary cities, but the entire state. He was a big part of that. And driver's licenses for illegal immigrants, and hotline number established during COVID pandemic so Minnesotans could report their neighbors violating social distancing guidelines. Good, great. What does that sound like to you? You set up a hotline. You set up a hotline to report your neighbors, right? This is the same thing that happened during in Russia during the Soviet Union, right? You would report your neighbor for spying or acting out against the Communist Party, and what would happen is they go pick them up, they'd round them up, take them to the gulag, and then guess what? You get your neighbor's apartment, right? I mean, that's just what it happens, right? This is exactly what's going on. So the fact that progressive colonists are really gushing about Walz just says everything you need to know about him, right? He is a far left progressive governor, and this is not even, they're not even hiding anymore. They can't hide the coin, right? It's out there in the open. And so if I'm a little giddy about it, yeah, because I've made my statements clear about that. I'm not super excited about Donald Trump being the candidate. I'm much more concerned about what a far left progressive program actually looks like in the United States. And this is what was being hidden the whole time, right? This was what was being hidden the whole time is Kamala Harris is a far left candidate. Tim Walz is also a far left candidate. The idea that people don't really care about the vice president, I can agree, right? They don't, but the vice president is a perception on the ticket, right? If whoever you pick for your VP helps create the perception of the ticket. And so the Walz pick is absolutely an unforced error and should be perceived as such. Anything other than that, anything other than an unforced error by or anything other than a true moderate on the ticket with her was never going to fly. But like I said, the most important thing to her was to not have these riots or these occupations show up on the Yale, the University of Wisconsin, University of Michigan, Ohio State campus, all these Midwestern campuses, right? Because this is where the battlegrounds are, these Midwestern campuses, Arizona, Nevada, and have a bunch of far leftist crazy students set up shop in the middle of the amphitheaters with their tents, picketing against the war in Gaza, because now she would have Shapiro as her vice president candidate, and she can't stand on it. She can't stand on that alone, right? So that's the whole problem, right? A little bit of an anti-Semitism issue on the left, and Kamala Harris is playing towards the base, right? And they feel like they've got enough of a lead now that they can go ahead and be aggressive with their pick. Tim Walz is it. If that's going to pay off, I doubt it. The problem now with the GOP and on the Trump campaign is that they have to key in on this. It should be very simple from here. No more talking about the Kamala Harris not passing her bar exam. No more talking about Kamala Harris is she half black, half Indian, whatever. It doesn't matter. None of that matters anymore. It never did matter, but don't bring it up. It's done. Let people make their perceptions. Don't talk about how she cackles when she laughs. Don't talk about all the stupid character flaws of Kamala Harris. All you have to do now is play video on loop in the states of Georgia, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Arizona, Nevada, pretty much any swing state. Just video on loop of anything that Kamala Harris said while she was running for president back in 2020, anything that Tim Walz has said over the last 4 years or the last 6 years even. All you have to do is play whatever they've said. Just play it. Just put it on loop. Tons of money, $100 million worth of commercials. Just do that for the next 2 months, and then at your rallies, you, instead of speaking for 75 minutes about whatever and just going off on tangents, walk out there for 20 minutes. Say hi. Say thanks for coming. Thank you guys for coming. I'm really happy you're here. Tim Walz is a far leftist. Kamala Harris is a California Democrat. They're all leftists. Here's what they said, and then just play a montage of all the crap they've said that is super far left, and it should be it. This should be it, right? There shouldn't be an argument about this. It shouldn't even be a problem. Now, is Trump going to do that? I don't know. Probably not. I mean, he hadn't done it yet. If he could somehow dial it in and make the tax, targeted, yeah, this would be done. Like I said, and I'm going to say this one more time: if this is Ron DeSantis in this position, right? If Ron DeSantis had been the candidate for the GOP, this race would be over. It wouldn't even be a question. The record in Florida is so great that if they had gone this route, it wouldn't even be a debate anymore, right? This would be an automatic. I know that people don't think Ron DeSantis is some sort of, eloquent speaker, but it doesn't really matter. Policy wise, he's nails, and you can't deny that. Anyway, so the funny part is, yesterday on Monday we had a major stock market rundown, and everyone tried to pin this. Everyone's been on the left. Everyone said, no, this isn't a big deal. Don't worry about it. It's the Japanese bank's fault, yada yada yada. And the right, all the MAGA side is saying, oh no, this is Biden and Harris. The funny part is the truth lands somewhere in the middle, right? The only reason that the stock market can be spooked by something so simple as a rate change and the Bank of Japan's base rate is because of how fragile it has been built, because the house of cards has been built on at this point, and how fragile it's been. It really is, right? All we've had is one not so great jobs report last Thursday, and it wobbled. And then on Friday, the Bank of Japan, which has been in a major stagflation period for like 40 years, is under major pressure to now raise their base rate in order to kill the inflation that is absolutely crushing citizens of Japan, right? Crushing citizens of Japan. They've been at like 0% in their base rate. And so what that's done, though, over this long period of time is that investors around the world have gone to Japan, and this is what's really kicked this whole thing off, right? Investors have gone to Japan and they borrowed money in Japan from the Japanese yen. And they borrowed it at an incredibly low interest rate, right? It's usually base rate plus 2, right? 2%, right? An incredibly low interest rate. And so they take that money and they went and bought U.S. equities with it, right? Or other equities, other investments, massive amounts of equities and investments with this really low interest rate money. Well, as long as the base rate stays low and interest rates don't go up, the payments on their loans were relatively low, right? As long as equities continue to go up in the United States, which they did for the past 20 years, by and large, they've just been rising like crazy, and over the most recent period of time, we've had massive increases in the stock market and equities. And so people take this really cheap loan and then buy equities with it, and the money they were making on their dividends and equities, it was able to pay off their loan payments at really low interest rates. And so long as the interest rate stayed low, there was no problem, right? Well, the Bank of Japan never really had an incentive to change interest rates because they were getting a lot of business out of this. It was helping them. But the problem is inflation has now caught up to them so bad that they even had to raise the base rate. And they raised it by 25 points, 25-point base rate. Okay, that's 1/4%. 1/4% is such a big deal to these loans that all these people who took massive loans out, and we've seen wobbling in the value of these equities as the equities start to come down and the yield rate for the Japanese yen goes up. You get to a point where the money you lose on your bank payment, or the amount that you owe back on your loan, supersedes the amount of money you were making on the equities, and it happens really fast. This is the most leveraged possible way to trade, right? Trading with money you don't actually have, right? It's like it's akin to going to a loan shark and then putting it all on the tip off of the Celtics game, right? Like it's the same thing, right? And what are you going to do if you lose? You got nothing to pay back, right? There's no collateral, right? So these people, there's large hedge funds, there's tons of investors that have taken tons of money out, and all this money, it's poison. It's called toxic money, is buried in U.S. equities, right? And so what's going to happen is, as these loan payments come due and they can't make payments on them, or they need to pay back these loans because they're losing money because of the interest rate that's gone up, they're going to have to get them out of U.S. equities. And as they pull this toxic money out of U.S. equities, you're going to see people selling at any available price, right, market price, and selling off in rapid rates, because the earlier they sell off, the faster they can pay off this loan and not be underwater. And that's a big issue, right? And it doesn't happen quickly. So the problem is, everyone seems to think, oh yeah, it was a quick wobble on Friday. We saw it really tank over the weekend. On Monday, a massive tanking in the stock market, right? NASDAQ saw the biggest heat of it because most of this money went into tech stocks. And then on Tuesday, you saw a little bit of a bump back up. All right, this today, right? We saw a bump back up. That was kind of going to happen, right? Markets don't tend to go straight down, right? They tend to bounce off the, if you're watching Wile E. Coyote, right? When he chases after the Roadrunner, goes off, then he bounces off the cliff and comes back up. But the reality is, this is going to take a while to unwind, right? If this money has to get out of the market and needs to go back to paying off these loans in Japan, um, then you need to, they have to get it out of these equities, and these investors can't afford it, right? So the I don't know, no one knows what the Bank of Japan is going to do. If they're going to raise interest rates even more, if they do raise them even more, the more of this money has to come out, right? People can't afford to keep paying this. Can't afford to keep holding these loans, right? Because they have to convert back to U.S. They have to take the U.S. dollars they get out of the equities, convert back to Japanese yen, and each one of these steps has a price to pay, right? And by the end of it all, well, a base rate might be 0% interest in Japan. By the time you've taken the loan out, and then you convert it to U.S. dollars, and then you purchase the equities, you're looking at like 7 or 8%, right? Which, then you go back the other way. Have you made enough money to make that up? Probably not, right? So it's going to take a while to unwind, and that doesn't really incentivize the market. That's not really going to help the markets balance out in any near time. So people are saying, don't panic. Okay, maybe time to panic a little bit, right? Because not only is this unwinding of bad investments based off of uh, borrowed money from the yen carry trades is what they're calling them, but you've also seen a wobbling in the jobs market. So the whole reason the United States has been, and the Biden administration has been able to tout, oh, the economy is working for them. It doesn't really feel like it's working for people, right? Everyone feels the cost, and the cost of living is up so high, but the market has really been sustained by this really hot jobs market, and they can't seem to slow it down, right? They don't really want to. What's the incentive to slowing it down? But the moment the jobs market starts to wobble, everyone sees it for what it is, right? Now you have an unwinding in the market, you have a wobbling jobs market. What's the next step? You're going to know more soon. In the next 2 weeks, we're going to get a few more numbers. You're going to get the actual claims made for unemployment. That'll tell you how many people are actually moving off and no longer have jobs or are claiming unemployment. Um, you're going to start to see the same numbers popping up in other countries, New Zealand, UK, right? A lot of our partners. And if they're starting to see the same thing, why not here, right? So there's a lot of things at play here that are really not in favor for the Biden-Harris administration. And remember, Harris cannot suddenly be disjointed from all the bad things of the Biden-Harris administration, but only be a major part of the good things, right? And that's been the case. So, this is that was what everywhere, across Twitter, or across X, formerly known as Twitter, across every single social media platform. Oh no, how could this type of unwinding be Biden or Harris's fault, right? That's not their fault. It's definitely not Kamala Harris's fault. She's not even a part of this, right? Well, how can only the good things she seems to be a part of? what we've been told is she was the last one in the room with Joe Biden on making any of these decisions, right? Any policy decision in the United States, she's been the last one in the room, right? When it came to negotiating with Putin to get bring back the American prisoners, she was a major part of it. She was a major part of that, right? But she's not a major part of this unwind. Not a major part of the the loss in the market or the jobs rate going down. She's definitely not part of that. Even though she did say that, you know, she's very her and Joe are very proud of Bidenomics that they built, right? They're very proud of it. So, but the bad part of it, that's not no, it's not our problem. So, we'll see how this plays out. But I'd say there was a greater than average chance that we see this continued downtrend over the next month or so, at least. And it's not uncommon for this time of the year to see a little downtrend in the stock market. It's pretty common to see end of Q2 and Q3 start to see a little downtrend. That's where you get the saying "green by spring," right? For all those traders out there, um, but to double down with bad jobs market and a couple other things that are happening in the world, it might be a little bit more dire than normal, you know. So, but we'll shift gears a little bit. Um, let's do this. All right, we're back. But I'm sure you heard about the attack on the Al Assad Air Base in Iraq, right? Everyone heard about that. That happened yesterday. Oh no, you didn't? Oh, that's right, because it was posted exactly nowhere. It took about 7 hours before anyone had said anything aside from Newsmax, right, on Twitter. It's the only place I heard about it was on Twitter, which is ridiculous, right? There wasn't a single article, a single mention. I was on Drudge Report looking for articles for it. I couldn't find a single report posted for it, but I did happen to find something about a day later. And for instance, so if you didn't know anything about it, here's what happened. So according to CNN, 7 U.S. personnel were injured with 2 rockets hit Al Assad Air Base in Iraq on Monday, a defense official said on Tuesday. 5 U.S. servicemen and 2 U.S. contractors were injured in the attack. 5 injured personnel received care at Al Assad Air Base, and 2 have been evacuated for further care, the official said. All 7 injured personnel are in stable condition. All right. Okay. So who did this? Do you know anything about it? So what it sounds like what ended up actually happening, a small terror cell operating in Iraq, sponsored by Iran, decided to fire a couple missiles or rockets into Al Assad and injured a couple people on the base. Okay, this wouldn't be normally like a surprise, right? Everyone would say, "Oh yeah, I mean, Al Assad Air Base seems to get attacked all the time." Yeah, it always gets attacked by some sort of small, you know, terror cell in Iraq operating on behest of Iran. But the reason it's a big deal right now is because everybody for the past 2 days have been waiting for Iran to attack Israel. Right? They said they were going to do it. Everyone's anticipating it, and we hear about this attack in Iraq, and all of a sudden, crickets. Right? Was this going to be the start of something? What else is going on? Da 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 da. Not even a word about this, right? 5 years ago, if this had happened, it'd be plastered all over the news, hearing about this attack and how we shouldn't even be there, how are we going to respond, yada yada yada. This wasn't even mentioned anywhere on the internet. Somehow it was scrubbed from the internet for the first like 7 hours. It took like 12 hours for CNN to post an article about this, and it was really hard to find. It's ridiculous. It was hard to find, but you know, any bad news right now seems to be filtered just to kind of maintain the status quo. I think everyone's a little on edge, and the U.S. government is doing something behind the scenes to try to appease Iran to make sure that they don't go and attack Israel, even though it's become a little bit more apparent that a ground assault is becoming more and more likely with Hezbollah in the north. Right? I hate to say it, but I don't really see what can be done now that the cat's been let out of the bag. Well, had this wouldn't have been an issue had the government and the Biden administration not handcuffed Israel and the moment they wanted to go into Gaza and clear out Hamas, right? Because of the slow walking of aid and this whole handcuffing, it's really extended this war by much longer than it probably ever needed to be. Israel has been fighting short-term wars, and I'm talking like short-term wars, hence the 7-day war, right? Like they fight short-term wars and they thrive off it. This is one of the longest conflicts they've had in years. And why? Because the support from the Biden administration has been slow walked, and they're trying to Peter Pan and not make it so bad, and yet we'll just do a little bit of this and this, a little bit of this. If they just let them go in, take care of business, and be done with it, this would have been done months ago. It would have been done months ago. We wouldn't have to hear about it, and you probably wouldn't have the same escalation issue, right? But because it's been going back and forth, all these all these groups around the Middle East perceive it as a sense of weakness, right? And that's how foreign policy works in the Middle East, right? If they perceive a little bit of weakness, they'll attack. You push where there's mush. And right now they feel like there's mush in Israel because the Biden administration has been hampering them in every single turn. And everyone hears about the public conversations between Netanyahu and Biden. Everything seems to be negative. Well, I know that the Biden administration doesn't like Netanyahu, but it doesn't change the fact that he's currently in control. He's currently in control of the war cabinet and has a coalition in Israel to run the battle, run that country right now. So if they want to keep this war going, they're doing all the things right to keep it going by continuing to hamper Israel's attempting to get this job done, right? So, of course, you didn't hear about the Iraqi attack on Al Assad Air Base because why would you? Why would that come up at all? It's not like it's a big deal in the Middle East right now, and any little thing can spark the next conflict. So let's just not even mention it and just bury the news, right? I'm sure you heard about it. And more recent news, as in like tonight, and I'm actually excited about this because she is probably one of the most far leftist members of Congress and is a member of the Squad. But Cori Bush lost in her primary. So, c'est la vie. Good riddance to Cori Bush. You will be, um, you will just be. You're not going to be missed. You'll be. I appreciate your service, but we don't appreciate what you brought with you in your brand of politics. So, uh, obviously, a more moderate Democrat has ousted her in her bid for reelection in her primary. So we will see a little bit more of a moderate approach, and so this does say a lot about what what even some of these more progressive districts, previously more progressive districts, are thinking. Right, they're ousting their incredibly progressive House representatives, and they're plugging in more moderates, right? So, you know, that says a lot about what capturing the middle means, right? If you can capture the middle right now, if Trump can find a way to capture the middle, or if Harris can find a way to capture the middle, that's who's going to win this election, right? This has never been more about. It's not really about turning out the base. The bases are enthusiastic. It's more about capturing the middle, and who can do that the best is probably going to win this. So, uh, at that, we'll leave it at that. Thanks for listening. I'm Daniel Samarin. This is At My Garage Again, AMGA. We'll go into that detail later, but I appreciate it. You listen. We'll get back on again soon. Thanks.